The coaching ledger, 47 seasons of who actually beat their roster. The conventional way to evaluate an NBA coach's wins. The problem is that wins include the players, and the players are almost always the point. A coach who goes 60-22 with the 96 Chicago Bulls is not demonstrably better coach than one who goes 42-40 with the 96 Vancouver Grizzlies. The roster did most of the work in both cases. What we actually want to know is, given the talent on the floor, did the coach make the team better or worse than it should have been? Net wins gives us a way to ask that question systematically. Since team net wins by construction sum to actual wins, we can measure what a team's collective player production predicts and then compare that to what they actually got. The gap is the coaching residual. Wins produced above or below what the roster should have delivered. I ran this across every season from 1979-1980 through 2025-26, 1,314 team seasons, 133 coaches with at least 3 seasons of data, using a within-season regression to establish each year's expected wins from collective net total, then computing each team's residual. The results confirm some conventional wisdom, overturn some of it, and surface a few names that deserve a different reputation than the one they have. NetWins is a reader-supported publication. To receive new posts and support my work, consider becoming a free or paid subscriber. So how does the calculation work? For each season, I run a regression across all 30 teams, or however many existed that year, to find the line of best fit between a team's aggregate net total and their win total. The regression produces an expected win total for each team. The difference between actual wins and expected wins is the coaching residual. The formula is expected wins equals the season intercept plus the season slope times the team net total. Both constraints are eliminated, or both constants are eliminated, and fresh. It started fresh for each season for that year's 30 teams. So formula adjusts for an error. A team in 1985 isn't compared against 2020 scoring levels, only against its contemporaries. The intercept's the baseline win total. The regression finds when the net total is at 0. It's always negative, which makes intuitive sense. A team producing nothing statistically would lose every game. The slope tells you how many additional wins each net unit of the net total is worth that season. Flipping the slope gives you the net total cost of one win. In 25-26, for example, it took approximately 54 net total points to produce one additional win at the margin. The coaching residual is then simply actual wins minus expected wins. A residual plus 10 means that the team won 10 more games than its roster production predicted. A residual minus 10 means it won 10 fewer. Across 47 seasons, the average within season R2 between net total and wins is 0.59, meaning the formula explains about 59% of the variance in wins, leaving roughly 41% for coaching, luck, health, timing, and other factors. The coaching signal is real and large enough to be meaningful. One important caveat: this approach attributes everything not explained by player production to the coach. In reality, that residual also includes schedule difficulty, injury timing, team chemistry, and plane variance. A coach who goes plus 15 in one season may have caught a favorable schedule as much as deployed a brilliant rotation. Careers of 10-plus seasons smooth out much of this noise, which is why the all-time rankings are more reliable than any single year. So the all-time leaderboard. Pat Riley's 181.4 is the largest career total in the database. 25 seasons, 3 franchises, consistently squeezing wins out of rosters the formula said should produce fewer. His best single seasons, the 96-97 Miami Heat, who went 61-21 when the formula expected 36.7, up 24.3 residual. The best single season coaching performance in 47 years of data. His single worst season, 2007-2008 Miami, where an aging roster produced a minus 8.3, but across his career, he was positive in 20 of 25 seasons. That's not luck. Jeff Van Gundy's 10.9 average per season, the highest rate in the database among coaches with 10 or more seasons. Every single one of his 10 years produced a positive residual, the only coach in the top 10 with a perfect positive rate across a meaningful tenure. His 96, 97, and 99, 2000 Knicks each produced residuals over 20, extracting 50-win seasons from rosters the formula valued as low to mid-30-win clubs. He's the most underrated coach in this database by any reasonable measure. Chuck Daly's 8.5 average over 13 seasons, including back-to-back 22 seasons with the Bad Boy Pistons in 89-90, 89-90, makes the strongest case for where he belongs historically. The formula says he was getting 8 to 9 wins per season out of thin air. Whether that's scheme culture or the specific fit with Isaiah Thomas and Bill Lambert's style, the results are unambiguous. Greg Popovich at ninth with 77.2 across 28 seasons is the most complicated result on the list. Notice that Popovich stepped down as head coach on May 2nd of 2025 after a stroke limited him to just 5 games. In 24-25, assistant Mitch Johnson coached the remaining 77 games that season and all of 25-26. So Popovich's 28 seasons here end with 23-24. His career breaks cleanly into 2 eras from 97-98 through 2017-18. He was positive in 18 of 21 seasons, including 8 seasons above 10, a genuine all-time elite coaching run. From 2019-20 through the 23-24 season, as the Spurs tanked around Wemby's arrival, he was negative in 4 of 5 seasons, including a minus 19.9 in the 23-24 year. Strip those final 5 seasons, and his residual through 2018 and 19 is 130.1 in 23 seasons, which will rank second all-time behind Riley. The formula is penalizing him for roster decisions that were front office-driven, not coaching decisions. Phil Jackson at 102.3 in 21 seasons, 90% positive, is the clearest case of a coach whose reputation matches the formula. He's the most consistent positive producer in the database by win percentage of positive seasons. What's notable is that he produced positive residuals with 2 very different rosters, the Jordan Bulls and the Shaq Kobe Lakers, across 2 very different systems. The formula says he was adding value in both environments, not just benefiting from talent. Mike Fratello at 7.5 per year, third on the all-time list, is the name that will surprise most readers. 3 tenures, twice with the Hawks and with the Cavs, 15 seasons, 87% positive rate. He never coached a dynasty. He never won a championship. He's been out of coaching for 2 decades and is known primarily as an announcer. But by this measure, he's one of the most effective coaches of his era at maximizing what his rosters should have delivered. The bottom of the leaderboard is Doug Moe, minus 102.2, which is the worst career total in the database. This requires some explanation because Moe was never considered a disaster. He coached Denver to several playoff appearances and was known for his run-and-gun offense. But the formula is penalizing him for exactly that. The Nuggets under Moe routinely had higher net totals than the wins would suggest because the up-tempo system inflated raw production numbers without converting them to wins at the rate the formula expected. His 81-82 Denver team had a net total that predicted 62 wins. They won 46. That's a negative 16.3 in one season. 11 of his 12 seasons were negative. At minimum, the formula is saying his roster should have won more. Alvin Gentry at negative 91.4 across 13 seasons is the second worst total and the harder result to explain away. Unlike Mo, there's no obvious stylistic artifact. Gentry coached multiple teams in multiple eras and was consistently below his roster's expected production. His worst stretch was New Orleans, 2015 to 2020, where his teams were negative every season. Mike D'Antoni at minus 56.9 is the most provocative name on the list given his reputation as an offensive innovator. His 7 seconds or less system in Phoenix produced some of the most exciting basketball of the 2000s, but the formula says those teams won fewer games than their collective production predicted, not more. Phoenix under D'Antoni from 2004 through 2008 had net totals that suggested 50 to 55 win teams. They consistently won in the mid to high 50s, which looks positive until you realize the formula expected 58 to 62. From those rosters. The system generated impressive individual numbers that didn't convert to wins at the rate expected. Will Hardy's minus 13 average per year and 4 Utah seasons is the worst per season rate of any coach with 4 or more seasons. Utah's underperformed this net total badly through his tenure. The formula says those rosters should have won meaningfully more games than they did. Steve Kerr, who is not on the list but was added when I noticed that he had a minus 29.8 across 12 seasons, is the most surprising finding for a coach with 4 championships. The formula says Golden State consistently won fewer games than the collective player production predicted. This doesn't mean that Kerr's a bad coach. The Warriors have been to the final 6 times under him. What it likely reflects is that the net total formula counts production from players who weren't necessarily deployed optimally. Bench players with high counting stats on a team that doesn't need their contributions to win. Combined with some genuinely below expected seasons in the Warriors' down years, Kerr's negative residual is a case where the formula and conventional wisdom are in genuine disagreement. So the worst single season performances, I want to make a note on that. Note on the worst season list, several of these, Popovich in 23-24, Keefe in 23-24, Hardy 25-26 involved teams that were deliberately tanking, which the formula doesn't know. A team that shuts down its best players to improve draft position will produce a massive negative residual because the formula sees a high net total against a low win total. This is the formula's clearest limitation. It can't distinguish genuine underperformance from intentional losing. This is a Popovich question. Greg Popovich at ninth on the list will generate the most debate, and it does deserve a direct response, so here it is. His career total is suppressed by the weight of his final 5 seasons with a deliberate Spurs tank, produced 4 negative years, averaging minus 11.6 per season. Strip those final 5 seasons, and his residual through 2018 to 2019 is 130 and 130.1 in 23 seasons, as mentioned before. The case that Popovich belongs at the top of this database, considering total and average season, removing the tank years, is real. The case that the formula is penalizing him for roster decisions that were front office decision or driven, not coaching decisions, is equally real. This is the honest limitation that we discussed before. It can't separate the coach from the GM or the season from the deliberate tank. It measures outcomes, not decisions. Popovich's career illustrates both the strength and limit of that measurement. So what does this not capture? This metric attributes the entire gap between expected and actual wins to the coach. In reality, it also captures injury timing, or doesn't capture injury timing. A team that loses its best player in week 2 has an inflated win total relative to its full season net total. The formula penalizes the coach for bad luck. Tanking, as noted before, deliberately losing games where a healthy roster produces positive net total numbers creates a large negative residual that isn't the coach's fault. Schedule and opponents. The formula doesn't know whether a team played a particularly brutal or favorable schedule. Luck. Close games break randomly. A team that goes 8-3 in one possession games instead of a coin flip 5-6 will show positive residuals that the coach didn't earn. For single seasons, these caveats matter a lot. For 15 and 20 season careers, most of them wash out. The coach at the top of the list were consistently positive across multiple teams in multiple decades. That's luck, not coaching. The data covered 1,314 team seasons from 1979-80 through the 25-26 season, with season regression of team net total versus actual wins used to establish expected wins. Mentioned all of this before. The coaching assignments reflect the coach who coached the majority of the games in a season, with a minimum of 3 seasons required for inclusion. You can visit more information like this at netwins.substack.com. Consider becoming a free or paid member. I appreciate it and thank you for your time.